Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Eve Marie Bessenbach, and I will be your moderator for today's session titled Expanding Our Circles. I am pleased to introduce our presenters, David Reckman and Jacqueline Ford. David is the president of the Sigma Circle at the University of Maryland, and Jacqueline is the vice president of the Sigma Circle at the University of Maryland. Please give them your undivided attention, and David, I will turn it over to you.
Thank you. As was introduced, my name is David, and I'm the Sigma Circle president.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jacqueline Ford, and I am the Sigma Circle vice president.
And today we're going to talk about expanding our circles. So first, I thought it would be interesting to see where you are all zooming from. So if you can in the chat, put down your circle, your school, location, whatever you feel comfortable, just to get a sense of who's here and where everyone is zooming in from. So I'll give it a few moments. We got someone from Iowa, which is really exciting. I've never been to Iowa, but New York, that's great. Well, it looks like we have different time zones too, which is exciting. And someone in Tennessee, that's great. Michigan. All right, so it's great to hear where people are zooming in from. Throughout the chat, feel free to put in questions and we'll see them. There is a slight delay between Zoom and EventMobi, but that's okay, and we'll make it work. So today's plan is talk about who is the Sigma Circle, then specifically focus on our recruitment and selections process. Talk about a call to action that we had earlier this year in the fall, a year of progress, specifically with recruitment and selections, and then future plans. And as I said, we would love to hear your perspective throughout. Please, please, please comment on how your circle is similar or different to what we do so that we can all learn from each other. We are in no way experts, and we are trying to use this opportunity to also learn from our viewers. So now, Jacqueline will talk about the Sigma Circle.
Thanks, David. So who is the Sigma Circle? So on this slide, you can see a pretty picture of our ODK fountain. It's located in the center of our campus here at the University of Maryland. So if you ever want to come visit our campus and see what our ODK fountain looks like, this is definitely a good place to stop by and check out. We have an active membership of about 130 students representing all 5 of ODK's pillars. Our circle is full of successful researchers, Goldwater scholars, teaching assistants, national champion student body presidents, editors-in-chiefs, and also musicians. Over the years, all sorts of leaders among leaders have joined our circle. Our circle is unique too because we also have faculty, staff, alumni, and honorary members that are important components of our community as well. Even during this virtual and online environment that we're experiencing now, our circle has been able to create and foster a community in various ways. Our goal usually each year is to host at least an event every month that allows our members to learn from each other and also grow in their leadership skills. This year, we have had about, I would say, 5 social events. One that actually just passed was our trivia night, which was actually pretty fun. We held it over Zoom and had questions about our circle history and then also about some of the members in our circle. So it was a unique way for our members to still get to know each other and then learn more about our membership. We also have a service week that actually this year coincided with the ODK National Service Week. We've had 2 alumni panels where our circle members have been able to learn from current and also alum ODKers about how to navigate the workplace, especially during this time where organizations are learning to make their workplaces more diverse, inclusive, and equitable. We also have a very special and unique thing to our circle, which is called an endowment fund for our lecturers. We try and bring in at least one super interesting lecturer to our circle so they can speak to us, and then also some of the organizations on our campus that co-sponsor. In about a month, we plan to host Van Jones from CNN as our guest lecturer, so we're very excited to have him come speak to us, even if it is over Zoom. Our circle also tries to stay connected with each other throughout various ways, even if it's not in person. For example, every semester we create a newsletter called The Leader. It's about 20 pages and it has content about ODK news, some campus events, and anything else that may be of interest. I think one article that's going to be written in this semester's The Leader is an article about sweatpants and everyone's favorite types during the pandemic. So that'll be an interesting one for sure. We also have a bi-weekly newsletter where we try and highlight our members and all of the exciting things that they're doing on and off campus, and also some tips so that they can improve themselves as leaders, especially during this, this pandemic. And then lastly, we use a platform called Slack, which I'm sure a lot of you guys know about. And we try and use the various channels that Slack offers to be able to cheer each other on, share events that we're doing on campus so that we can support each other, whether it be virtually or in person, you know, socially distanced with masks, so that we can make sure that we're really fostering that community of leaders among leaders within our Sigma circle. So picture here is a screenshot of what our executive board looks like. You can definitely check this out on our Sigma Circle website because I feel like the picture doesn't do it justice. But our exec board is divided into 9 positions. We have a circle coordinator and a faculty advisor. And we even have a circle assistant who's not pictured here, but her name is Sarah Williamson. So besides David and I, we have a lot of different positions that make our circle function. The first being the philanthropy and community chair. This person is supposed to coordinate our service activities, our service week, and anything that we can do as leaders, among leaders, to give back to the communities that we're members of. We also have an alumni and member engagement chair. This person is responsible for connecting us with each other, and then also some of our awesome ODKers that have graduated from our campus. This year, this person has done a great job of connecting us even in virtual ways through those alumni workshops that I had kind of spoken about, and then also through our LinkedIn group, which is a great way to connect even during this virtual time. As I mentioned before, we have an events and lecturers chair, and this person is responsible for bringing in and coordinating events with some notable speakers that we would like to hear some of their wisdom about. In the past, we've had the Olympic gymnast Ali Raceman, and then also the late Congressman John Lewis. And as I said, in about a month, we're about to have Van Jones come. So we're very excited to experience that. We also have a membership and induction chair. Usually during non-pandemic times, this person is responsible for making sure that our inductions process in both the fall and spring is performed very smoothly in coordinating all the different logistics along with our circle assistant, Sarah Williamson. And even during this virtual time, they've both worked tirelessly to make sure that we're able to induct our awesome members in this virtual environment. Within our circle of leadership, we also kind of have a triangle called our comms team. We have a public relations chair that's pretty much in charge of creating all of the content for our recruitment, and then also any of the different award ceremonies that we have in the fall and spring. They're very talented about creating different social media posts and different flyers that we can share virtually. Our digital communications chair is also responsible for that bi-weekly newsletter that I had kind of already alluded to, and then also making sure that our Sigma Circle website is up to date and running so that anybody who's interested in our circle and possibly joining our membership is able to see what our circle is truly about. And then lastly, we have a historian. Usually during normal times, this person is responsible for taking pictures of in-person events and truly capturing all of the awesome things that our circle is doing throughout the school year. However, of course, during this online environment, this person has been more responsible with keeping up with our social media, and then also trying to capture ways, like screenshots of Zooms and things like that, of all the awesome things that our circle is doing. And then last but not least, as I mentioned before, we do have our circle advisors, and they're just a true blessing to our circle executive board. We spend every other Friday with them bright and early at 8 a.m. To meet with them and coordinate some of our awesome activities and even ideas that some of our executive board members have in order to make sure that our circle is thriving. So it's definitely amazing to have that wonderful support, because they have really connected us with resources on University of Maryland's campus and then even beyond. And honestly, without Brooke Supple, Dean Chang, and then as I mentioned, Sarah Williamson, our circle executive board would not be where it is today. So a special shout out to them.
So now that you know a little bit more about what and who our circle is, I wanted to talk about our recruitment and selections process, how we build our circle. I will also preface this by saying that this process has been years in the making. It's evolved through generations and generations of leaders, and it is complex and complicated. And so I think this year we've really thought about our recruitment and selections process, and I would love to hear about what you as your circle are doing for recruitment. And so after I present about us, I would love to hear more about yours through the chat. So get ready to write about that. So how we recruit. First off, there's the fountain, and that's definitely a pull. We use it on all our promotional material, and we even used it on one of our first slides in this presentation. So you know we love our fountain, and many apply because they want to get their name on the fountain. But that's not all we do. Everything is an org-wide effort. It's not just me and Jacqueline, it's not just the advisors, it's not just the exec board. Everyone in our organization, in our circle, helps out with recruitment in various ways. We use our social media through Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. We haven't used TikTok, but maybe we should. And we post informational materials. We, the deadline, how to apply, where to apply, who to ask questions of throughout the application period. We also utilize UMD campus-wide club and organization events. So at the University of Maryland, we have a first and second look fair, which is a time when all the different clubs and organizations on campus come out to introduce themselves, meet with the potential members, tell them about their mission. This used to be done in person around our fountain, but now it's all on Zoom. But still we participate in that as a way to connect with people who might not know about ODK. We use academic and org listservs, so a lot of emails are sent out to specific organizations, but also to groups of organizations. For example, the Interfraternity Council that can then disseminate the information further. We also use the academic listservs, which are intended to reach pretty much every student at the university through their different colleges. And lastly, word of mouth. And unfortunately, this is one of the recruitment strategies that has been most affected because of COVID. Obviously, people are not talking socially as much as we used to, but that is still a big part of our recruitment, is people who know leaders who are in ODK and aspire to be like those leaders, try to apply and hopefully get in. So that's what our recruitment looks like. And the second half of it is selections. So this is once the application is submitted and onward. So the application for our circle is fairly straightforward. Applicants have room to include up to 20 activities or involvements that they're involved with. So this includes being president of a club or part of a team or TA or a researcher or a musician, or being part of the Honors College or receiving a library scholarship. Those types of involvements, awards, activities are all included in the application. There's also room for 2 short answers about what their most important leadership activity is and what leadership means to them. And so what these are supposed to do is just provide more information about their activity sections so that we have a more holistic picture of them as an applicant. The second part is scoring. So once all those applications are submitted, the executive board uses an objective scoring guide to rank applications based on points. And I'll talk more about this in I think the next slide, but every activity is scored using a point sheet, and then those numbers are tallied, and the applications are ranked in descending order from the application who got the most points, so therefore the most activities and the ones that get the most points, to the applications that got the least. And then we hit the third part, which is selections. And compared to the point sheet, which is supposed to be an objective way to do it, the selections is more of a subjective way of looking at the applications. And this is, and I'll talk more about it in a second, is a 6-hour or more meeting that involves the entire membership of our circle to discuss and vote on all of the applications that came in, or as many as we can. Usually we talk about the top 50 or so % of applications just because we get too many to talk about. We usually get 250 to 350 applicants every semester, and just to do those who have the highest points justice, those are the ones we focus on. And to get in, you need a 75% vote from the membership. And then if you're invited, you get tapped, and every semester we tap between 30 to 60 inductees every semester, and that is the timeline of our selections process. So now a little bit more about the points. All of our applicants are incredible leaders in their own way. And so what the point sheet is really supposed to do is find the leaders among leaders. And the point sheet rewards the breadth and the depth. And what I mean by that is breadth is different activities. So for example, if someone is a teaching assistant, also does research and is also on the soccer team and is also president of a club, that is different activities, but they're all leadership positions. Depth, on the other hand, is someone who is an applicant who's devoted a lot of time to a single cause. So for example, if someone's involved in student government, that usually takes a lot of time. But if they've grown in their leadership capabilities over 3 or 4 years to start as a committee member and then become a representative and then maybe join the exec board and then maybe even run for student body president, that is depth in one field, but that is still leadership as we consider it. And so the point sheet is intended to use both breadth and depth in assigning point values. And it's a living and breathing document because things change. For example, in the past couple of years, students have had the opportunity to design and run their own classes with a mentor. And that is a leadership position in the scholarship pillar. And so we've added that. In the past year, for example, we've had COVID ambassadors who are responsible for making sure that people in our community abide by COVID guidelines, a position that obviously didn't exist a year ago. And so we've added that as well to make sure that the points are updated based on what our community and what leadership in our community looks like. The picture and the screenshot that I have here is just one part of this 11 or even 12-page document of different activities. And I focus on the athletics pillar since it's the most straightforward. And you can see that points are awarded, for example, here based on the number of years in an intercollegiate sport, with 3 years being awarded 8 points, 2 years 6, 1 year 4. And so we look at every application, and then based on the activities that are put in the application, they're then scored accordingly. If there are activities in an application that don't correspond to something on our point sheet, which happens frequently because we can't cover every activity on campus, we usually come back as an exec board and discuss how it should be scored, what's it more similar to, how many points does it deserve. And that is the objective way of looking at our applications. The subjective way is that selections meeting that I talked about. And here we have a picture of what a normal in-person selections looks like. I think this was the last one before COVID happened. And we would all meet in a room and sit for 6.5 hours looking at applications, and you can kind of see in the blurry background the application that everyone is currently thinking about and discussing. And this is an opportunity to voice praise or concern about a specific applicant. Praise may include something along the lines of this person goes above and beyond, or checks in on all the team members to make sure that they're okay and how they can help. Concerns, on the other hand, may include that this individual wrote that they're president of a club, but in fact they're not. It really does fill in the missing gaps and serves as a check on our point sheet to make sure that we aren't just blindly picking applicants, but we are really considering their quality and character. And that's what this meeting really ensures. I think most of our members consider this being the most important meeting of every semester. This is the one meeting where attendance is mandatory, not just voluntary. And we do get a good turnout and everyone does participate. And everyone is proud in the process that they participated in. So as I mentioned earlier, I would also love to learn about how you recruit new members at your school. So please, as much detail or as little detail as you are willing, just write in the chat how you recruit. Because as I said, our process has evolved for many, many years. It's very complex and complicated, and we're trying to critically analyze and see where we can improve. So I'll give it a minute or so for this. And I know there's a lag, so that's okay. Okay, so email and social media primarily. What one person wrote. I'll give it just a few more moments and then we'll move on. Just in the interest of time, I'll move on, but feel free to keep writing, send it in. We'll look at this chat after the presentation to make sure that we picked up on all the ideas that you included.
Yes, ditto to what David said. All right, so this past academic year, our Sigma Circle experienced a call to action where we truly learned the importance of self-reflection and how to improve our circle. So during and after our fall 2020 selections process, the members of our circle really felt that our selections process that David had kind of just explained was not the most equitable, especially in regards to diversity and inclusivity. So this was definitely an unsettling sentiment because our circle really strives and really wants to select applicants that are reflective of our circle values and overall campus community. And so after listening and digesting all of these valid concerns and, to be frank, great truths that our members were sharing with us, our circle members, our executive board members, and our advisors really wanted to take time to reflect and figure out ways that we could collaborate to improve our current selections process, with obviously the main goal being to make our circle more representative of the diverse student population that's on our campus. So what does an equitable and anti-racist process even look like? Well, we certainly do not have the answer to that because, as David said, we are not experts. However, we are scholars and we are learners. So we did figure out some methods and perhaps measures that our circle can take to make this process more equitable and anti-racist. For example, we did decide to look into ways that we could consider applicants who may not be able to afford participating in unpaid internships or any typical organizational activities that we noticed that a lot of our members participated on campus. We also explored ways that our circle could be more transparent and more consistent in our information sharing so that anybody who was interested in joining our circle really had a good understanding about how to make their application the strongest and also just how to be able to achieve membership to our honor society. As a circle, we also took some time to really recognize the systemic barriers that exist for marginalized communities as a whole, and then also at our campus at the University of Maryland. We realized that some of these students who are members of these communities display leadership in other ways that we just may have not done a great job of recognizing during our selections process. So we wanted to figure out a way to make sure that we were able to include those types of leadership positions and ways that they were displaying leadership. Additionally, we sought to increase our recruitment efforts, especially with organizations that we noticed were not really well represented within our applicant pool each year throughout selections. And this was something that we really tried to connect with our current members and also the ones that really sought to reach out to us and also improve our circle so that we could really work hard to reach out to those communities of leaders among leaders that we just had not met yet and wanted to meet because we know that they can and be members of this honor society.
So after this call to action and reflection, we kind of began a year of progress, and it's not finalized because that's what progress is something, a process that kind of will continue even past this year and hasn't finished yet. And so the general timeline of what quote unquote this year of progress looked like, we had selections in the fall and everything was held over Zoom. And afterwards, we had that reflective period, and that consisted of a general body meeting to debrief about selections and served as an open forum for members to ask questions, find out more about the process, provide ideas, just actually discuss what people were thinking so that we could improve the process and act on that. From that debrief, we realized we needed a working group. And so through the remainder of the fall semester, winter break, and currently into the spring semester, this working group, which I'll talk about in a second, met to discuss ways we could improve the selection process, what worked, what didn't. And those were really, really fruitful conversations, which led us to the spring 2020 selections, which just finished a couple weeks ago. And so we incorporated the feedback that we got throughout this year into selections, and now we're in a time of reflection to see what worked and what didn't, and where can we improve further. So the input from stakeholders really fell into 4 buckets, 2 of them being the recruitment side and 2 of them being the selection side. The first was the diversity of applicants. So how is the background of student leaders considered? How are we thinking about different forms of leadership that maybe it's not being the president, the student body president, maybe there's something else that we're missing. The second bucket was the recruitment techniques that we were using to reach applicants. How do we reach out to potential applicants, and what type of language are we using to make sure that it is inclusive and welcoming to all? The third was the transparency of the scoring process, so the point sheet that I described. How are point values determined? And can we expand the number of point opportunities? What things are being weighted more than others? And the last bucket is selection, so that meeting itself. How can the selections meeting be improved? Can we talk about more applicants, more discussion? How do we make sure that everyone has a fair shot to get to the selections meeting? And so to tackle those 4 buckets, we created this diversity, equity, inclusion working group. And something that I really want to emphasize is that this was a voluntary group of members who wanted to be involved. And what ended up happening was roughly 12 passionate members from the circle decided to meet every other week. Oftentimes there is this disproportionate burden that is placed on marginalized community to fix the broken system. And that's not fair, and it's not how it should work. And so what this the emphasis here was, this was just a working group to hear ideas, to listen to concerns, and then Jacqueline and I and the rest of the exec board, with the help of the advisors, would act on those concerns to improve the process. obviously with input, and you know, we ran our new ideas by the working group to make sure that it was in line with their thinking. But the brunt of the work wasn't placed on the working group, because that's not what it was. That's what the exec board is. And so, as I said, we met every other week, and we critically analyzed our process. We incorporated the feedback and provided suggestions for the executive board. And it really did serve as a sounding board. And so now let me tell you about the implemented changes from the past year to our process. And I think, though, yes, our process is very complex, some of these things can be easily adapted to any recruitment strategy for any organization. And the things that I think we should have been doing earlier, and I'm glad we're doing now, and will continue into the future. So, inclusive recruitment language. And what we did there was we personalized the recruitment material to make it less about the fountain, which I said we love and we depict everywhere, and more about the community of leaders that our circle represents. And so we had spotlight posts about specific members and what they were doing. And we created a word cloud of different activities that people were involved with, and just making it more personalized and less about just being on the fountain. We also increased organization outreach. We spent more time thinking about which organizations do we historically reach out to and which organizations we don't. And we reached out to more organizations and clubs across campus. One specific group we reached out was to the university president has a task force of Black student leaders to improve anti-racist policies on our campus overall. And that was a group we targeted and made sure that they knew about our application and could pass it on further. Outside of specific recruitment, we also improved our application website. We created a 4-page FAQ sheet and a 5-minute information video recorded by Jacqueline and myself about what our application is. Something that we really emphasized was the importance of that, putting all of your activities. We provided examples of what activities are, because those who put 3, 4, 5 activities on their application were at a disadvantage compared to those who put 18, 19, 20. So really emphasizing the need to fill out the application in its entirety gave everyone a more level footing when applying. On top of the improved application website, we also decided to host some information sessions over Zoom. These were intended to be like office hours where potential applicants would stop by into a Zoom room where Jacqueline, myself, and an advisor were there to answer any questions, technical or not, about our application. We held 2 sessions, and the first one we failed to advertise on Instagram, so no one came, and I had a lovely hour with Jacqueline and the advisor. But we realized our mistake. We advertised it on Instagram the next day and the day of the second information session, and we did have a much bigger turnout of roughly 15 people who asked really good questions about the application and could really improve it. The feedback we got there was that this was a great resource and that they wish it was there earlier, and something that we'll definitely continue to use in the future while also advertising it. We also focus on our scoring guide, the points and the objective measure of selections. To add more activities, we also began to incorporate paid experiences and volunteering to a greater degree. We really struggled with the paid experiences because it doesn't really fit into any of the 5 pillars, but it still could be a form of leadership. And the example that we've kind of used is that just working at Starbucks isn't necessarily a leadership position, but being a manager at Starbucks is, since you're still working with a group, leading the group, and something that ODK kind of pillars and values do align with. Volunteering to a greater degree is giving back to the campus and community, which is the 3rd pillar. And especially during COVID, that doesn't necessarily have to limit itself to our campus, since a lot of us are virtual and living at home. So our communities have expanded, and so have our point sheet. And we changed the weight of GPA since we realized that wasn't entirely fair. We used to award more points to those who have exceptionally high GPAs of 3.8 or higher. But since that's not advertised, and since that's not the requirement for membership into ODK, we realized that wasn't giving them a fair advantage. So by actually taking that away, we were able to look at applicants with a much more diverse GPA and hopefully created a more level footing for those who maybe weren't doing well in the first pillar, but were exceptional in second, third, fourth, or fifth. And lastly, we restructured the selections process. So as I mentioned, we only could really talk about 45–50% of applicants based on the time that we had. But by talking about 5 people at a time, we were able to fit more people and a greater percentage of applicants. So this semester, I think we talked about roughly 55–60%. So those who maybe didn't have those activities that scored them high points could still be discussed because we were able to talk about more people.
All right, so based on all of these implemented changes that David had gone over, we wanted to share with you some future plans that our circle is looking into so that we can continue to self-improve. So as we have kind of communicated throughout this entire presentation, this is something that's an ongoing process, and what we've done this year is not the end. So we realized that we want to have a continued attention to these efforts to make sure that our selection process and our circle as a whole is more diverse, inclusive, and just more equitable for all of our applicants and future members that we will have to the Sigma Circle. We want to make sure that we're fostering an environment and also an attitude that really encourages self-reflection and improvement. We're all leaders among leaders, and this is an important skill to be able to practice and continue to take with us in whatever spaces that we find ourselves in the future. We'll definitely continue to have those semesterly GBMs and those open forums for our members to continue to voice their ideas and just ways that they feel that our circle can continue to improve its selections process and then also our functioning as a whole. We want to make sure that we're keeping our members a part of the process because that's what makes our circle the Sigma Circle. We want to continue our greater community outreach. As we've mentioned, we're really trying to reach all the different organizations and communities at the University of Maryland. And we've realized that our campus is constantly changing year after year, and there are new organizations popping up that we may not even know yet. So we want to make sure that we are reaching out to these orgs, these communities, so that they know about ODK and how to apply so that we can recognize these leaders among leaders. Additionally, while David and I and the rest of our executive board have really enjoyed working on these efforts, we've realized that this work cannot go unseen or unfinished without another role on our executive board. So we hope to create a role that is solely focused on our recruitment and our selections to ensure that there is consistent communication with other groups on our campus, and then also have a focus on ways to make our selections process and our circle more diverse, inclusive, and equitable as well. So we're very excited because in a few weeks, we're having our elections for the coming academic year. Can't believe this year went by so fast. And we're hoping that we'll be able to fill this new role that we're exploring. So with that, David and I would just like to thank you so much for coming to this presentation and hearing how our circle has adapted to this virtual environment in ways that we've worked to strengthen our circle and also the selections process. If you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat or also just email us at odk@umd.edu. And I was just informed that we will be able to share this presentation with you guys via the Event Mobi app. So please look out for that if that is something of interest. And hopefully you'll be able to learn from us, and we'll definitely learn from you guys from all the information that you've shared with us today. Thank you very much.
Thank you all.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for your time and for attending David and Jacqueline's presentation. We do have time for questions, so if you have any questions, please feel free to drop them in the chat. I also wanted to remind everyone that at the bottom of your screen for this session on EventMobi, there is a session evaluation form. Please make sure that you fill that out because that feedback is very valuable to both the presenters and ODK as well. So as a reminder, if you have any questions, please feel free to send them in the chat.